Well, another year, another E3 Expo come and gone, and with it there's a whole bunch of new games to talk about, so let's get right to it. Now before I begin, I want to mention that these are just the games that I liked, or the ones that stood out the most to me. This isn't really a thorough review of E3 overall, but just things that stood out to me. So there are going to be a little bit of varied opinions. So with that said, let's get into it. First and foremost, I want to talk about Assassin's Creed Origins. Really, I think Ubisoft had one of the better presentations this year, but Assassin's Creed Origins, being an Assassin's Creed game, of course, was one of my favorite games that they presented this year. And I'm really excited for it for two reasons. One, because it's been 2 years since the last AC game, and two, this time we're exploring a different era, that being ancient Egypt, according to Ubisoft. It just looks neat overall, the way they presented it. The graphics are just absolutely gorgeous. You're in ancient Egypt, you can see like all different architectures and structures. Did I also mention that this game is a prequel to the original Assassin's Creed games? Yeah, apparently this is definitely set before there is an Assassin Brotherhood and there's a Templar conflict. So that's an interesting take on everything. As well as the fact that there's no Eagle Vision set yet, so that may have something to do with it. And how you actually see things is using an actual eagle. So that's definitely an interesting take on the series. A second game I wanted to talk about was, one of the ones that was mentioned last year at E3, and that's God of War. Now this time, Kratos is in Norse mythology now, dealing with everything, and he apparently has a son, which is a little strange considering, I don't know who would want to mate with him considering his entire backstory and lifestyle, but, we'll just have to play the game and find out. I already talked about that last year in my E3 thoughts for 2016, and I'm still excited this year because he still seems just as badass as before. I actually like that one little clip towards the end where he's talking to this giant serpent and they can't really hear what it's saying, but apparently his son thinks he's trying to help him. There is also the new Spider-Man game that's coming out this year, or next year, or whatever, and from what I can tell, that looks completely badass, and which is good because there's only been a handful of good Spider-Man games that I've played in my lifetime. Like, seriously, the way that this flips out, it just looks so fluid. Like, the motion just works out so well. There are a couple of QuickTime events based on the little gameplay trailer. A lot of destruction that he's probably going to get blamed for based off of that. Yeah, you can see the crane, fall down in several places, but yeah, it definitely looks and feels like Spider-Man. You even have some of the standard villains in there, like Kingpin, for example, but I wonder what other villains have a role in this. I actually can't wait to beat up on Venom in this, too, because, who doesn't like beating up on Venom? Or maybe even being him and getting the black Spidey suit. Detroit Become Human, that's a new one I was interested in. That looks like a Until Dawn type of game, and it's basically where you have a bunch of androids who want their own rights, and they're basically trying to take over or just be accepted in Detroit and start a revolution. And that one looks pretty interesting with the choices and everything and how fluid it looks. But once again, I talked about that last year. In fact, a lot of the games that I'm talking about now are ones that debuted last year, but still the excitement for them is still there and it's building as time goes on. Speaking of Until Dawn, there's a new game coming out that they mentioned called Hidden Agenda, which even the directors mentioned is basically like Until Dawn, and they copy from that. And you're basically playing as these cops who are trying to deal with this serial killer, or one of the cops looking suspiciously like Laurel Lance from Arrow, and they're going to have a lot of fun with that because, like in Detroit Human, your choices affect the outcome of the game. I definitely love multiple choice games where one wrong turn here could drastically affect the ending, and that's something I kind of want to see on my PS4. Naturally, you have all the standard games like a new NBA and new Madden, which hopefully doesn't kill Tom Brady considering he's on the cover of the new Madden right now. And another Call of Duty, this time it's going back to the Second World War, which is strange because I thought they were done with that after Modern Warfare 2, but that's Activision for you. Really, Ubisoft, Sony, and Bethesda had a lot of good products. And I want to talk about another one called Anthem, which I just finished rewatching. And the first thing I thought about that was the way the exosuits, or javelins, as they're called in the game, they look suspiciously like Iron Man suits. It looks like Iron Man. That's definitely Iron Man's suit, but with guns, and you're flying around all over the place. Mixed with some Crysis and some Call of Duty, but still, it looks fascinating. And I kind of want to play that, the way you're just shooting things off and just flying all over the place, and swimming too, apparently, from the gameplay footage. There is a new Pokemon game called Pokken Tournament, and that looks fun because who doesn't like Pokemon? And you're just basically playing as different Pokemon in the middle of a battlefield, just throwing punches and slinging fire at each other and whatnot. That is definitely an interesting one I want for this year. I'm saving this one for last because I wanted to talk about it the most, and I'm the most excited for it, but skeptically, and that is Star Wars Battlefront 2 for 2017. Now, if you recall, the last Battlefront game, the one that came out in 2015, I was very, very iffy about trying to buy because I wasn't sure if I wanted to spend all that money on a game that didn't have a lot of content, because that was one of the major complaints, not to mention the $50 season pass. In the end, I ended up getting the game anyway, but only as a Christmas gift, so I didn't buy it, but I played it, and it was fun for a couple hours, but after a while, it just wasn't the same as the original Battlefront games. This time, however, things are different. There's definitely a lot more. You have all three eras. You have new heroes, new villains, you have new vehicles, you have a campaign story, which is pretty much the best part about this. In fact, the actress Janina Gavankar, she apparently showed up to this E3 to pretty much discuss the game, as well as she was in the audience when Battlefront 2 2017 debuted during Star Wars Celebration about 2 months ago. The fact that it's canon, it also helps out a lot. So I can definitely see everything that goes on between the end of Return of the Jedi and The Force Awakens. I think everyone got their expectations lifted once they saw Darth Maul fly around through the screen and start chopping people in half. But that's really what I wanted out of a Battlefront game. A game with all the content of Battlefront 2 with the graphics and sound of 2017 games. And it looks like we're going to get that as long as it's not DLC heavy and there's no season pass, which is a good thing because I'm not shelling out any money for extra content that should have been in the game in the first place. At least in that amount anyway. They're definitely taking big steps, EA, because I think they heard a lot of complaints they had, and they're trying to rectify it, and that's good. But until I actually get this game and see what it's like, Battlefront 2 for 2005 will always be king of the ring. Okay, so those are my thoughts on the 2017 E3 Expo, and I want to know what you think. What's the game you're most looking forward to this year or next year? Who do you think had the best presentation out of all the companies? Whatever you think, leave me a comment below and tell me how you feel. Also, don't forget to check out my Twitter at AstroidMike. Don't forget to check out my blog. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel if you like what you see here and you want to see more. Not to mention, go ahead and share this with other friends. And as always, I will see you around. So until then, this is me saying, peace out.